Give yourself some time internally to think about why you're uncomfortable in there, and is there a boundary that's being crossed that you may not have thought about before. Give yourself that time to think about what would make you happy in that situation, in that group, in that relationship. And I think once you find out that answer, you know exactly where you have to draw the line internally to be happier and more thriving in all your relationships.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Listening Circle. My name is Anisha Laroya, and I'm here with my mother, Hardleen Laroya, and we're going to be talking to you about something that is, again, very personal to us this time around, and that is how boundaries can save your relationships. So to begin, I just want to mention that when we say relationships, we don't necessarily only mean romantic relationships. We're talking about all interpersonal relationships of any kind. That could be with your friends, with your family, with your children. It does not matter. All relationships need boundaries. And this conversation is about learning how to navigate them, figuring out exactly where you need to be in order to communicate what your boundaries are, and also to be able to receive others and what their boundaries may be, and removing the guilt we have associated around setting them.
And also, I think we're going to also touch on the fact that, are boundaries really bad for a relationship, or are they good?
Exactly. Because I think a huge thing with that question is because oftentimes there's a negative connotation associated with having to put boundaries up. People associated with, oh, there's a sort of emotional distance. I now have to put barriers up. Boundaries do not equal barriers. Boundaries are actually just tools that we have at our disposal in order to make sure that our relationships are being conducted as they are needing to be conducted.
And I think boundaries also protect us, right? They protect the relationship. So how I have always looked at boundaries, because again, having a large family, having lots of people around me growing up, even after, I've always felt that boundaries were the way I kept my emotional security and stability, because without them was overwhelming. Like we discussed before, a lot of times people think, oh, boundaries are not good because you're distant or you're not showing up like yourself. And I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. So I think this should be a very interesting conversation. What is your perspective?
On boundaries as a whole, that they are absolutely essential to every single relationship. And boundaries are not one person versus the other. It is both people creating bounds together. And that's in any relationship. Take romantic relationships, for example. I think that every single romantic relationship needs communication boundaries, which is lines that will not be crossed no matter how upset, angry, or volatile the argument might become. In my own relationship, a huge communication boundary we have is that we will never cuss each other out. We have vocalized and implemented this boundary. It is a mutual boundary. It is not one person versus the other. There is not one person wanting it more than the other one is. It's just a mutual boundary that's for our relationship, and it has served us well. Because in my opinion, when you cross certain boundaries, it's very difficult to go back. And so a great way that we maintain our communication is our boundary of we will not swear at each other out of anger. We refuse.
So that's one of the great boundaries in a relationship, where it's like, how will our communication be?
100%.
Whether we are angry, whether we are sad, whether we're having a conflict or even a discussion or an argument over something that we have differing opinions on, how are we going to handle that? So that's an amazing boundary to have. I also think that in romantic relationships, another one is on time. When you need time for yourself. And, what I feel in relationships almost gets out of the hand is when two people come together, are very much in love, but then they do everything together. So there's no boundary on having time for, yourself, your friends, having that personal time, having your girlfriends, or for a guy, it's, going out with the guys and having a great time. So a lot of times when in romantic relationships people come together, they forget about the rest of the world. So that's another time boundary where I feel it's so important to acknowledge that even when you've just gotten together and you may be having a great time, or in the first 5 years of the relationship. I mean, I've been in, more than a decade long relationship. It's very important to figure out what you need, and that you're not forgetting yourself somewhere along the way in terms of setting that time boundary as well.
I think a huge thing with also those kind of boundaries is communicating that it's for the both of you. So the
Yes.
communication surrounding boundaries, oftentimes boundaries get a bad rep because people don't know how to communicate them. It's that simple. Instead of, for example, with the time scenario, you have two options. You can look at your partner and you can say, I need more time to myself. And then watch them struggle, because they will, with that statement. Or you can look at your partner and say, I think it would be so lovely for us to individually pour into ourselves so we could come together and pour into each other even better. Both of those communicate the exact same need, but get a completely different reaction. So I think a huge thing with the discussion of boundaries is also the discussion of how do we even implement them. As a 22-year-old girl, I know that for a lot of people my age that are listening, there is a huge thing with self-individuation as you grow up and boundaries with parents. Whether that's as you get married, start your own family, the largest boundary navigation is with in-laws and parents. For everyone in their 20s and 30s that are navigating that life. And again, one of the biggest things with these is that you're going to be made to feel guilty about a lot of the boundaries you set for the benefit of your own self and family. But if you're able to communicate them in an effective manner, there'll be a lot less conflict involved. Plain and simple. So communication is what allows the boundary to be great, because otherwise it is emotional distance. And remember, when you are setting a boundary, it is not solely for you. It is for the entire circumstance. It is for everyone who is involved. When you are looking at your in-laws and you're saying, I am the one who's parenting my children, like, not you, obviously in a nicer way, like we said, communicating that effectively. Remember, it is not for your own mental peace. It is also for theirs. It is also for your child's. Everyone involved is benefiting out of drawing those lines. And so, yeah, I feel like with you, boundary navigation has been such an interesting thing, Mom, because of blended families.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's another circumstance where boundaries are essential in order to make it work.
Yeah, very essential. So, blended families is a great one because I've had many girlfriends ask me this question as well. It's like, how do you guys make it work? Like, how? Because I remember there's a friend of mine who was, in a relationship. Her husband actually had passed, and for after years, she was ready for a beautiful relationship. And one of her biggest questions to me was like, what can I share with her that would help her create a beautiful life? And one of the biggest things I said to her is that when you are coming together at a certain age, like if you're 40 and you already have had children, you've had a relationship, and now you're ready for another relationship for whatever reason, your previous relationship didn't work. One of the biggest things that we kept in mind that I always say is that we are choosing each other. We don't need each other. It's a choice to love every single day we wake up. So when you create that part of your life where it becomes a choice to love, you create automatically that beautiful boundary of we both have our own lives. So you don't necessarily have to, again, we say communication is key. You communicate it through love and choice versus actually going like, well, I don't agree with this or I agree with this because we're a blended family. You automatically made it important that we are important, but we're okay leading our own lives, what we've already created with our children. but we come together as us, just for us, not for anyone else in the world. So I think that really helped me in my relationship. And believe it or not, when I met my friend 5 years later, she said that was the best piece of advice she ever got because there were no
Well, you had to learn
expectations.
it the hard way,
I
right?
did. Yeah. Yeah, I
You had to learn
did.
it the hard way. This wasn't something that was known.
Natural.
This was
Yeah.
a hard lesson that you're now sharing.
Yeah.
We're saving you years of not practicing this and then ending up there. This is a hard lesson that
Yeah.
you learned and now you're sharing because honestly, it is so easy to blur boundaries when you first meet someone with a blended family. It is the easiest thing in the world to pretend like everyone's kids are each other's and there's nothing amiss. This is just one perfect little family unit. It's not like we've spent all our lives separate. Like
Yeah.
it's so easy to just glaze over all of
Yeah.
that. And
All
so
the siblings get along.
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And so I think that this is a really valuable lesson for people that are listening because the more you understand that not everything has to be enmeshed, the better your life becomes when it comes to
Yeah.
blended families.
Totally. The other thing I think with boundaries that I find is so important because different cultures also treat boundaries very differently.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on where you come from and your parents and your generations and ancestors, the boundaries are treated very differently. So, the culture that I came from, there were no boundaries. Your parents had no boundaries on what they said to you. Your uncles and aunts had no boundaries on what they said to you or your children or your husband. Nobody gave a damn. And I was always taken aback by the lack of it growing up. I was like, that's very interesting. So, and then I realized as I grew up and now, being in North America for that long, that it made my relationships better as I set more boundaries. Like I actually enjoy myself more with family, love bonding with family, welcoming family, and doing things together because I have boundaries.
I think it's also important to acknowledge with that a lot of the boundaries we create aren't something to be vocalized with other people, but rather something to be alchemized within ourselves.
That's a powerful statement. You need to say that again.
The boundaries we oftentimes create are not something that need to be vocalized and approved of by other people, but are actually something that need to be alchemized within ourselves.
Yes.
And so when we are talking about family, when we are talking about things like that, oftentimes the boundaries we create, we do not need validation for them. We do not need to discuss it with everyone openly. It'll do nothing for them.
No.
Because nothing is changing on their end.
No.
And if you expect things to change on their end, you're actually completely outsourcing your power. So oftentimes people are like, oh, boundary setting is so hard. And it's like, it's about you though. If you mentally decide, hey, I'm not going to tolerate this any further. Or I'm not going to put myself in situations where I will engage in this behavior. You will no longer be there. Your mental peace will be protected. And I think the problem comes is that we spend a lot of our childhoods trying to find power within our family structures and having our own power trampled. And so what ends up happening is as we become adults and we want to set boundaries about things that matter to us, we actually feel the need to go to other people to talk about it in the same situation because we want their validation to feel more empowered. That's it. It has nothing to do with whether or not they'll listen, because most of the times we know whether or not they will. It has nothing to do with whether or not they'll change. It has everything to do with our need to feel validated.
And it also is our need to get them to do what we want them to do. But we can't control people.
We can't control people. So oftentimes, I think one of the greatest things that never gets talked about with boundary setting is half the time, it's not about anyone else.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with anyone else. If you know internally, I am not going to be engaging in this any longer, I will not condone a certain behavior, you will have mental peace.
Yep.
It is that simple. There will be no disruption going on inside your head of this is stressful, this is bad, this is this is that. The only thing that stops you from having that is the fact that you haven't alchemized that boundary within you. You don't believe in it yourself.
Exactly.
You don't believe you're worthy of having that boundary yourself.
So would you say then that boundaries is really an internal setting of alchemization than an external setting with others, even though we think we're doing it with others, but truly it's ourselves that's bringing
Yeah.
it together?
To put it even further, boundaries are an energetic contract that you create within yourself. It is an energetic contract. When you have signed that contract and you know there is no turning back, like a great example is, I will never tolerate this again. You don't have to say it for people around you to sense it. They will know. And it might disrupt them, but it won't matter. You have signed the energetic contract within yourself. And also, when you've signed that energetic contract, you will not struggle with communicating them. You will not struggle with knowing how to, because also you won't have anger towards the person you have to set it with anymore, because you're fine within yourself. And when you don't have anger towards them, you're going to be able to tell them in a proper manner why you're setting it in a way that doesn't hurt them.
But also sometimes, don't you think, based on the fact what you just said about energetic contract, that sometimes there's no need for communication, depending on who the person is or who the people are that you're setting it with. Because certain people...
Controversial take right there.
Because at the end of the day, to me, if I have... And I'll give you an example. If there's a space you walk into that does not make you feel uplifted, fulfilled, or feel good, and you set a boundary within yourself to say, well, next time, I'm not going to put myself in this situation, there really is no need for communication.
Well, so let's give an example to this to make sure what you're saying. I completely agree with you, but I think examples are what will give our viewers a really good picture of what you're talking about. Let's say there's a group of women who are all mom friends. And they kind of have a mean girl dynamic going on. And one of the women in the group chat, they all have a group chat together. One of the women is just deciding, like, internally, like, hey, I don't want to be around this mean girl energy anymore. There are two types of reactions that occur. If she fully signs the energetic contract within herself, she will no longer need any validation from anyone there about her not being in the group. She will not need to tell them about it.
Nope.
She will just start distancing herself. They will feel the weight of that energetic contract. They will know she is distancing herself. They might ask each other. It will not impact her psyche. Plain and simple. Or there's the second hand, which is the person that is saying, I'm setting boundaries. They're going to text in the group chat and say, I don't appreciate all of your group dynamics. I feel like there is a mean girl vibe going on here. And I'm going to now distance myself. There's two kinds of people.
That's
and
a lot
the
of
second
ego.
person, there's a lot of ego. First of all, they want the attention of that boundary setting rather than the actual energetic exchange of, like, simply cutting.
And feeling better.
And feeling better. But second, they also wonder why it's so fucking difficult. But now you've just allowed in the opinions of 8 women who actually don't even know how to set boundaries themselves.
Yeah.
And now you're opening the floodgates, energetically leaking completely.
Yeah. And giving away your power.
Giving away your power. So oftentimes it's so important, like exactly what you said. You have to have discernment on when to talk about your boundaries, because most of the time, you'll find that 70% of the time, it won't matter whether or not you mention it. It's all about you and what you're willing to tolerate. You cannot change other people. Yeah. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it made me think of, and you know why I thought of it? Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I'm addicted to that show. And they love telling each other they're cutting each other off. And I'm like, well, if you were truly cutting someone off, just fucking do it.
I agree with that one.
And so I was like, this is a classic example of what you're talking about, where a lot of the times when we vocalize these boundaries, it has nothing to do with
the other person.
The other person, and everything to do with our own inner need to feel heard.
Moving to another piece of setting boundaries that is very, near and dear to me, and I thought, let me hear your opinion on it, is what about, people where, if it's a close relationship, right? Say it's a husband and a wife or a girlfriend and a boyfriend, and you go, okay, I really don't like the way sometimes you talk, or something happened or the way you react.
PSA to anyone listening, if you do not like the way your partner talks, there's deeper things to worry about than boundary setting.
No, I mean, it could be a situation, right? So in a situation, you were having a conversation and you didn't agree on something, but one person doesn't react the way you feel comfortable, and you bring it up. But then the infamous thing I've always heard, even from other people, cousins, and this happens in relationships, is, well, I'm comfortable with you. I'm at home. I'm at ease. So I should be able to say whatever I want. Why do I have to, manage my words and, think about what I have to say to talk to my loved ones?
So it's amazing that you bring this up, because I was actually chatting about this the other day. People approach relationships there's two factors that matter. In life, here's how you need to approach things. You should approach relationships, specifically your intimate ones, so your family, the closest ones in your life, as though you are fueling them, but with no need to be loved in return.
Mm-hmm.
You should constantly pour into loving people, showing up better for them, but also feel no obligation to be loved in return. That doesn't mean you're not going to feel... I'm not saying you should be treated like shit.
Yeah.
But I'm saying do not go in with the need to have your own cup filled and then always pour into their cup. And if everyone does this in a home, wow, how beautiful that home turns out. But the problem is, with what you're talking about, is that most people actually approach relationships the other way, which is, I am not going to pour into it, but I expect to be loved. I am not going to try my best to improve myself. I'm not going to show up every day to the best of my ability, but I expect all the love in return. So as a result, I'm comfy. I should be able to speak whatever the hell comes to mind. I should be able to disrespect anyone in my sight, because this is my home. And I'm owed love.
Yeah, see, there's one aspect that you're talking about. And I think the other aspect, what I feel, is that if people treated their relationships better than what they do outside with friends or at work, their relationships would be thriving.
100%.
The problem is, we are very nice when we get out into the world. We are very nice at work because we don't want HR up our ass. We're very nice with our friends because we want them to be friends with us, but we take our family for granted.
Because they're always there.
They're always there, and we feel they'll never leave. And that, to me, is the worst thing that we can do to ourselves. So yes, you're comfortable at home, but you should be a little cautious and think about, these are the most important people in your life. More important than work, more important than friends, more important than everything. Am I showing up better than what I do everywhere else? At least, like the minimum gauge.
And if you're in a relationship with someone and you're dealing with someone who has this comfort mentality, which is, this is my house and I can say whatever I want in it, I think to a certain degree, certain things you can't control. Certain things cannot be saved. Certain things have to come from other people. And at that point, you have to evaluate, based off of your knowledge of the person, either how much you're willing to tolerate of them saying whatever they want because it's their house, or how likely they are to grow. And based off that evaluation, go forward. Because at the end of the day, you can't control people around you. You can't control their ability to want to do better. And I think on top of that, this ties back into the energetic boundaries that we were talking about, where if you energetically set a boundary within yourself, it doesn't need to be vocalized, of, I will not tolerate being spoken to a certain way. I will not tolerate volatility. The person who is comfortable will also be able to tell, because you will excuse yourself. You will let them talk however they want, but it will not affect your psyche. You energetically will detach. And so I think the only way to navigate those dynamics where someone is just unwilling to see where they have hurt someone else, because it's their house,
they've crossed the boundary.
They've crossed the boundary. If they're unable to see that, the only thing you can do is, again, alchemize the boundary within you, and then evaluate going forward.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that. Like, we're going to come back to that in a bit. But I wanted to kind of ask the next part, what about boundaries between parents and children? Even when the children are younger, what do we think about that relationship?
I think it
Are
depends
they
on.
important?
They're extremely important.
What about when, like, what do we consider to be appropriate when it's parents and children?
Well, I noticed the biggest problem with boundaries between parents and children is that parents believe it only goes one way. And that's where many of the issues come from.
And tell me about that.
Of course, there are boundaries between parents and children. Children cannot look at parents and call them names and cannot speak. But then parents will look at their children and do the same. They will call them names. They will insult them. They will go low. And they'll expect the same treatment in return. That is not okay. Because also,
So they'll expect a different treatment.
Oh, yeah. They'll
Yeah.
expect, like,
Children to be
children
respectful.
to be completely respectful while not ever maintaining that themselves. And I'll tell you where the issue comes up with that the most. The parent will be fine. The parent will be fine. Maybe their kids will cut them off if they really push the limit.
When they're older,
When they're older. But the parent will be fine. What ends up happening, though, is what you're teaching the child is that their boundaries are not worth it. Your child will now struggle to set boundaries their whole life. And they will have to learn how to set them from scratch throughout their adulthood because
And
you are showing them my boundaries can be respected, but yours cannot. So how are they going to approach romantic relationships? They're going to find people who are probably as abrasive
Similar.
as you, like whoever it is. And then they're going to say, and then that person's going to say, well, my boundaries got to be respected, but yours do not. I see this actually happen a lot with young boys. And this isn't very talked about. I see so often young boys with strong mothers who went through a lot, will go through this dynamic with their mothers, and then and actually I see it with daughters and fathers too. It's the same thing. They'll meet a woman who is as strong as their mother is, and then their woman will speak to them in the way that their mother did. And they actually don't even realize how many boundaries are being crossed because it was so normalized.
They don't even realize that their wife has become their mother.
They don't realize it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And
Or their husband has become their dad.
Or their husband has become their father.
Or they sound like them.
Or the fact that they even attracted someone who sounded like them because that's what they knew as normal. As parents, the most powerful thing you can do for your children is allowing them to set boundaries and having those boundaries met. And I'm not saying the temper tantrum toddler or the temper tantrum kid who's like a teenager and is like
slamming doors.
Slam doors, I want to be in my room all day, every day.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying give in to that. But if you speak to we are all human. If you slip up with your child and they say, I don't think that was very kind how you spoke to me, the most powerful thing you can do for them, because that is them testing the energetic boundary.
But also that is them standing up for themselves.
They're trying to see if the boundary is there more than anything else. They're trying to see if they get the same treatment back or if they're worth the same treatment back. And so when they look at you and they say, I don't like how you spoke to me, I felt very mean, the most powerful thing you can do is say, you are so correct. I crossed a line. I crossed a line and I should have never spoken to you that way. I'm so sorry. And I'll make sure to try to never do that again. Everyone's human. We all slip up. There are points yesterday, like my brother and I never get volatile with each other, but my brother took my car keys to his university town by accident. And I lost my mind. But then 2 minutes later, it was, I should have never spoken to you that way, no matter what you did.
Yeah.
That is completely my bad. It's the ability to reconcile after, because boundaries will sometimes get crossed.
Yeah, we're not robots. Yeah.
Nobody's going to be this perfect. Nobody's going to act exactly how you want them to, from anyone's perspective.
And we're not going to act
and we're not going to we're not going to act exactly how other people want them. But it's about the reconciliation at the end of it. It's about the ability to be like, that line was crossed, and the reminder that the line exists.
So if we were to kind of summarize, first of all, even in terms of like setting boundaries and what that means, and in terms of relationship, in terms of parent and child, in terms of thing, would you say that really boundaries are an energetic contract which is set within yourself and needs to be alchemized within yourself versus the external world? And that for children, it applies equally as it applies in relationships, as it applies in husbands and wives, and as it applies with extended family.
Was that a question?
Yeah, like summarize it for me.
You just summarized it perfectly.
Okay.
No need for the question.
Okay. So I was like, is there anything we're missing here? Just
I
so
think,
we can leave everybody with like a summary of what it
yeah,
is.
I think you covered it pretty much. Boundaries are absolutely essential to everything we do. You cannot maintain a single relationship in your life, or let me rephrase. You cannot have a functional relationship in your life without boundaries. You can maintain them without it. If you're willing to tolerate a whole lot of bullshit, but you cannot have a functional, healthy relationship in your life without an extensive amount of boundaries. And that's healthy and that's good and it's for every party involved. And so I think when it comes to boundary setting, the most important thing is coming back into yourself and alchemizing it, like you said, within yourself, being able to know that it's something you're doing for the greater good of every party involved. And then having confidence in that choice and knowing that it's going to set you all free. I think if you stick to those sort of criteria, it'll
And give
become
it time.
easier and give it time. If you've spent most of your life never being able to draw lines, your lines are going to look really wobbly in the beginning. They're going to look a bit odd. They're going to be slanted and going off to Mars. You're not going to know where they're going. Like, it's going to be
And do we
complicated.
have any tips for people when they are in a situation and the boundaries get crossed? Like, what would be like a summary of a couple of choices they have? Like, what do you do? Like, if you're surrounded by people and that you don't know how to set a boundary, you're confused, you're like, maybe I'll end up in a fight with them, argument with them. Is there something we want them to think about?
If their comfort requires your compromise, then you would have never made them feel comfortable either way.
I love that.
If their comfort requires you to bend to their will, there is nothing you could have done that would result in their comfort either way. So if you are in a group of people and you worry that your boundary will disrupt the dynamic of that group, just understand that the dynamic was already off.
So you're not the one. So one thing to keep in mind is,
And maybe you are. I'm not saying you're not the one. You could be the problem to that group. I know many groups that I've been in where I have been the issue, but I also understand that those were not groups that I was meant to be in. And it's not that they are wrong or I am wrong or they are right or I am right. It has nothing to do with any of that. There was just a misalignment.
right. So that's a great one, which is like, if you feel like their happiness includes your compromise just so that group can function, you're not meant for it and it was
Not
never
meant to be in the
functional.
group, yeah.
But then the other piece also I feel is that if you truly feel uncomfortable in any relationship, it doesn't matter whether it's a parent child, whether it's your uncle, aunt, whether it's your family, your husband, give yourself some time internally to think about why you're uncomfortable in there and is there a boundary that's being crossed that you may not have thought about before. Give yourself that time to think about what would make you happy in that situation, in that group, in that relationship. And I think once you find out that answer, you know exactly where you have to draw the line internally to be happier and more thriving in all your relationships.
I think that's a great note to end it off on. Thank
Perfect.
you for that. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of The Listening Circle. We hope you took away exactly what you needed, and we hope that you are able to navigate boundaries within your own relationships. And if you have any questions, visit us on Instagram and send us DMs, comment on our page. We're always replying, and we're so looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Toodles.
Thank you.